Hello and welcome to the Saturday edition of our daily podcast from the Ipswich Super440. My name is Andrew Van Leeuwen and I'm joined by Speed Cafe's managing editor Stefan Bartholomaeus. We're back at our Airbnb, Stefan. It's reasonably late as we're recording, staring over a half-eaten takeaway pizza on the table here. But that was a heck of a day of car racing and storylines at Queensland Raceway.
We saw the fairytale, Will Brown and his new 888 Mustang with a 50mm air restrictor, getting it done. We spoke in recent days about how much pressure that whole storyline had built on that driver and that race team, and they went and delivered. Yeah.
I mean, we'll get on to obviously the headline part of this, which is the fact that he won that race. You can talk about whatever circumstances there were there with safety cars and Brodie Kostecki's mistake and that sort of stuff, but ultimately Will Brown had Brock Feeney's measure all day through both qualifying sessions and in both races. And that's really the true measure that, you know, he's back in form. It's something that he's found so hard to do, not just this year, but even well back into last season.
They've had to fight so hard to get through each segment of qualifying all season. And then in the second session today, Q1, they do one run and then save a set. They sit out the final minutes so confident that they'd done what they needed to do to make it. I mean, that, for me right there, like encapsulated the turnaround that's gone on here.
Well, remember, I can't remember if it was Perth or not that long ago, they did the same thing based on the fact that whether they made the shootout, they'd used all their tyres or not. So they may as well just see if they could save a set of tyres for a shootout. He was sitting like 8th or something. It was never going to work. He got bundled down the order and out of the shootout. But their thinking at that point was like, we're going to be starting either at the very back of the top 10 or, you know, a few positions behind that anyway. So to be doing the same thing but for such different reasons now and so confidently and making it through so easily, you're right. It's just a huge turnaround.
And they'd also had a difficult Friday, don't forget, with that gearbox issue. They missed a whole bunch of time. But I think it's been pretty clear through the day, like Will Brown just back to his confident, bubbly self, bouncing around outside of the car. In the car, they even had some dramas with the dash in quali, and he was really forthright on the radio about needing to fix this. I don't know whether this whole saga's given him a bit more sort of grunt to really be firm on even the little things, but ultimately in the race, we saw the Will Brown of old. It sounds like a cliche, but the thing that he had been the best at, particularly during his time at 888, was the racecraft stuff and just fighting his way through. And we really hadn't seen that. Like, so much of the focus goes on his poor qualifying, but as we know, his qualifying wasn't great last year, but you could never count him out in the races. He would always push through. Yeah. And they gave him half a sniff today, and he was not going to be denied.
Yeah, I mean, there were some circumstances, as I said. Brodie Kostecki could have easily won that race had he not made the mistake and run off the road and lost some positions, including the position to Will Brown. And then, obviously, the safety car bunched that field up, created that spectacular battle, you know, at the end there, where Will came through and forced his way to the front. Even Brodie Kostecki said in the press conference, I knew he was going to go. I knew he was going to do everything to get to the front, so I just glued to his bumper and followed him through all the madness. Spectacular racing, and just with the context of the fairytale, like just one of the great supercars races.
And this fairytale story, for me, the most bizarre part is the way that restrictor has become this ornament that Will is parading around. And we saw Mark Larkham present it to him during practice yesterday, which was odd and unexplained. But today, Will actually did talk about the fact that as the true car dealer, car salesman he is, he actually bartered his way into getting it off the supercars.
Yeah. I mean, he went... he was asked by Supercars Media if he would do a sit-down interview in the lead-up to the weekend, which, again, I can understand why you might have a bit of trepidation about something like that, given how much pressure we really felt was on his shoulders heading into the weekend. But he said, I'll do it if I can have the restrictor, because the restrictor belongs to the Supercars. And Nathan Prendergast said, yep, I'll do what I can to make that happen. And that's what led to that as you say, bizarre moment on TV where he was presented with it, and it's basically that's his now, and that's why we saw it up on the podium. He was drinking champagne through it on the podium, parading it round. My question to you is that actually a good look for particularly supercars, but for anyone? Like, this whole thing was kind of embarrassing for all concerned, except for Will, because it was completely out of his control. It wasn't, he wasn't the one who made the mistake of leaving it in the car. He wasn't the one who perhaps wasn't diligent enough about getting something that had been loaned for a demo back. And, man, he really let everyone know that it was not his fault by being up there on the podium. I think, was it a good... It's a fun thing, but was it a good look?
Well, for us on the outside, it's fantastic.
It's the best.
It's just ramped the story up tenfold.
Yeah.
For Will Brown, it's awesome
Yeah.
that he can really ram this point home, and it's part of this celebration and euphoria.
Yeah.
If I was Supercars or if I was Triple Eight, I would have done absolutely everything I could to bury that thing and it never see the light of day, because let's not get away from the fact that this is incredibly embarrassing for both of the series and the race team. There's been a lot of back and forth on who's to blame, but...
there were no winners outside of Will Brown, who's today literally a winner.
Yeah, but Jamie Whincup sat in the presser yesterday and talked about the fact that sport is about telling stories.
Yep.
And they put this story out there, and everyone has feasted on it.
Yep, absolutely. Now, you had a chat with Andrew Edwards, Will Brown's engineer, after the race. Lovely guy, very an emotional guy, like does ride the highs and lows of the sport, takes what he does incredibly seriously. It sounds like it was a pretty emotional chat that you had with him. Yeah,
it was the chat that I wanted to go and do after the race. I feel like we all know that this sport's not just about the driver, but obviously the narrative around all this has very much been about how it's affected Will, but certainly Andrew has ridden the roller coaster as much, if not more, than Will, because not only has he had all the self-doubt and the pressure of underperforming while at Triple Eight, but then he had the extra element of the embarrassment that he hadn't found it and the team collectively hadn't found it for 6 months. So I think, he's, as you say, he's an emotional guy anyway, and he is somebody that does doubt himself and question himself and obviously analyses everything so hard. But then there's also just that connection that he's built with Will. Mm-hmm. And when I mentioned to him that Will had specifically said on the broadcast, like, thanks so much to Andrew, who didn't give up on me through this whole process, there was some tears in the eyes, and he really didn't know what to say to that, just because of this thing that they've been through together. It's such a big part of this feel-good story, and it's obviously... It's not the most visible part of it, but the fact that AE has been on this ride with him, it is a big part of why this is such a feel-good story. And also, like, again, we talk about the physical restrictor and all of this stuff, and different people will tell you different things about how much it's worth, whether it's 5 horsepower at the top end or 6 or a tenth or whatever you want to call it. But Andrew made it really clear that the difference from where they'd been to where they were today wasn't just the restrictor. And so part of it is the release of that weight of constantly looking for something that you can't find, and they could really just lock in and focus on the setup and everything like that in the lead up to the weekend and today. Obviously the other side of that coin was the pressure it really added on this weekend, but Andrew did speak about the fact that Will just handles that sort of pressure so well, and I think that does tally with what we know about him. Like, he is naturally a pretty self-confident guy. Absolutely. So as soon as this was discovered, it really flicked the switch in Will, and he just obviously rose to the occasion. Yeah, and it's funny you say that about what AE was talking about in terms of the restrictor wasn't the only reason why they went out and won a race today, because literally, as you were having that chat, I was in the press conference and Will Brown was saying exactly the same thing. He said, like, this was not just about... And that's why he made the point a few times during the week, like, we're not just expecting to go out and win because we've found this one thing. Like, we're actually trying to
rebuild a season that's been tough by Triple H standards anyway. And he talked about the fact that he knew that there was going to be so much pressure on him because of this. And this whole week, he has just been locked in. And he's been working with AE so closely to make sure they were going to come out and have a good weekend this weekend, because he knew he needed to. Because if they didn't, and he's got the luxury now that kind of whatever happens tomorrow, it's, they've achieved, but they've overachieved probably what they even expected to do. They've got the feel-good story. I'm not saying it won't be a storyline if he goes out and qualifies 15th tomorrow. But, yeah, there was a real focus on the fact that this situation had created pressure. It was so outwardly communicated by the team about the fact they'd found this issue. They could have buried the whole thing and spoke about it after the weekend and not had that pressure. But
I think there's people in the team that would have rather that had been the case.
But I don't think one of them was Will Brown.
Exactly. So I think at the very least, they felt they owed it to Will to actually air this reason as to why he's gone poorly. But just on the what happens tomorrow and into the future, that was one big message from Andrew Edwards, was the fact that he wasn't doing a victory lap on we're back and everything is like just back to how it was when they won the championship in 2024. This is a sum of various parts of what they've tried to improve on, but even like they've been better on the super soft tyre than they have been on the soft. And yes, they won the super soft race. They qualified well in the other one, but
he was on the podium. But
yeah, but I mean, Brodie Kostecki
it was
ended up a fair way up the road. Same with Matt Payne. So there's a lot of fast guys doing really well on that tyre in particular.
Yeah, it's the one thing, and I don't think the whole finals format has been overly popular at Triple Eight since what happened at the end of last year. But Will did say in the press conference today, thank God for finals. It just means his season is still so alive. If they can continue to get on top of these things like the soft tyre, he's still in the mix, despite everything that's gone on and despite how ropey his form has been for whatever reason, whether it was the restrictor or whatever else. There's absolutely no reason he can't win the championship this year because of that format. And he did say, I'm just so lucky with this format.
Yeah, that's not lost on anyone down there.
It didn't look that lost on Brock Feeney, who was sitting next to him, I can tell you right now.
But the other side of the coin today really was Grove Racing. Mm-hmm. They looked set for a 1-2. They were just about to switch the cars around. Obviously, Matt Payne had a tyre advantage on Kai Allen when the safety car came out for Ryland Gray spearing off at turn 3. It looked like it was going to be an absolute banner day for them, and they didn't get a car on the podium. I do love, though, again, we talk about the strategy of Grove so much, the fact that they, in both races, they inserted Kai into the fight by pitting him early and running him on 2 tyres.
And just playing the disruptor role.
And especially when they were battling with Brodie and DJR, who haven't had the strength of a second car. Ryland has been obviously showing a bit more lately, but Groves, they're just so good at trying to play 2 cards at once.
Yeah, absolutely. Brodie Kostecki, a pretty good day for him, really, even though, he was probably, at the start of the second race, it looked like he was just toying with the field, because as they were all kind of battling, he had that opportunity to bolt, and he kind of didn't. But it felt like the race could be his to win, and then he has that mistake after, was trying to pass
Kai.
That's right.
Which was interesting because, again, he had the tyre advantage, but it looked like he was too desperate to get it done too quickly. Yeah. But then again, I thought it was really interesting too that he said after the second race that at QR, it's felt like when you're right up behind somebody, it's actually making the car in front loose. And he was saying maybe it's just the forward, maybe not. But he thought that once he got Matt early in the race that he would be able to drive away, and it didn't work that way. Obviously, we're watching it going, is Brodie playing with them because we're so used to it being harder to follow with the way it heats the front tyre. But Brodie was really saying it was the opposite today.
Yeah, but still good day. A first and a second place, a good haul of points, and a very fast car. They're obviously in a pretty good position. And then even Ryland Gray in the first race was quick. Obviously had an engine issue. They had to go through a frantic change between the races. He was really late getting out on the grid, like just within the nick of time for that race, and obviously made a mistake and ended up in the sand in that race. But those DJR Mustangs are pretty fast. But for all of that, the biggest headline for Brodie for today was that unsafe release. And when we think unsafe release, we think about a car clattering into another car as it's coming down pit lane. But in this case, it was the way he stormed out of his pit box, straight through the Team 18 pit box as the Team 18 crew was setting up. And their team manager, Mitch Croak, I mean, he almost got wiped out by the car. It was quite frightening, really, how close it was. They ended up copping a fine and teams points, was it, in the end?
Yeah, 30 teams championship points.
Yeah, so it was put down to a mistake by the team. It's hard to know exactly where you should apportion the blame for something like that. The driver is still the one driving the car, but that's pretty scary stuff. That's the sort of thing that can really go wrong and have big consequences for a human being.
Yeah, it's normally something we see teams agree on allowing a car to go through their box on the way into their own. But this was on the way out, and I didn't actually see it during the live race, but they showed the onboard of Brodie's actually during the cool-down room, and it was sketchy. And so that was, first port of call was the Team 18 garage after that race to see what they had made of it. And, they'd already submitted something. It wasn't until after the race that they actually submitted something to race control. Asking for it to be reviewed, but there was a bit of uncertainty on what actual rule that would have been broken there. And in the end, it was actually an FIA International Sporting Code about don't endanger people's lives when you exit your own pit box, because it didn't line up clearly to a single supercars rule. So that was... In the end, when you think about the potential consequences of that, doing that when there wasn't a clear deal in place between the teams, I think maybe they got off a bit lightly there.
Definitely. I totally agree with that, because that is often, when you're coming in through someone else's pit box, that is something that's agreed upon. And this was not something that had been discussed. And it's not, I don't know if I've ever actually seen drivers going out through a set-up pit box with crew ready to execute a pit stop like that before. So... it's really something you've got to have a conversation about if you're going to have a crack at it.
Yeah, and the Team 18 guys did actually have their right rear in a little bit so that Brodie could could actually drive around, not through. So that's obviously shows they weren't expecting it.
Yeah. Anything else we need to talk about out of today?
I guess one of the other ones in the first race was the penalty that Kai Allen got for the contact with Chaz Mostert out of turn 5 when he ran him off the road. What was your take on that?
I think it was one of those situations where if it wasn't penalised, I'd probably be okay with it, but I was okay with the 5-second penalty as well. He really didn't give him much room on the exit there. Like, he'd kind of won the battle, and he could have just left enough room there. And I think that he probably was far enough ahead that Chaz wasn't going to be able to, at least legally, get up the inside of him into turn 6 there. So he probably could have just left him a bit more room.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been offended if it wasn't a penalty, but in general, I don't like seeing guys just run other blokes off the track. And in some categories like Formula 1, they seem to just allow it and say the guy on the outside has no value on the racetrack, which is bizarre. So... yeah, I think it was probably the right call. It stood out a lot in the first race because there wasn't that much action. Yeah. There was so much wheel banging going on in the second race that it probably wouldn't have stood out so much. But Kai has sort of emerged as a bit of a surprise modern-day enforcer in the field. I think we really saw that at Wanneroo.
He got a taste for blood at Wanneroo. He had that clash with Brodie, and he's like, this is great.
And he certainly backed it up off the track with some of his comments there too. So, he certainly, last year he got pushed around a lot, and it's very clear in all these battles that that's not happening again.
Absolutely. All right, should we leave it there?
We should.
Let's leave it there. Make sure you do stay tuned to speedcafe.com across Sunday, because we'll have all of the news from what is hopefully an equally interesting and exciting day at Queensland Raceway. And we'll be back in this podcast feed tomorrow night with the Sunday edition of our daily podcast.